for being the part of 17th Marketing Conclave. Before we kickstart the discussion, we would like to thank our cloud communication partner Root Mobile, session partner IAB Tech Lab in partnership with Pubmatic, gold partner LogicServe Digital, session partner Agraya, and knowledge partner Kantar. Without any further delay, it's my pleasure to introduce our esteemed keynote speaker, Mr. Nicolas Bidon, Global CEO of Xaxis. I welcome you, sir.
Thank you, and good evening to everyone. My name is Nicolas Bidon. I'm the global CEO of Xaxis. We are a Group M and WPP company who has been innovating in the area of programmatic marketing for the last 10 years. And I've thought about how to apply AI and machine learning to digital media for the last 5 years. And I'm very excited today to share with you some of the things we've learned along the way, as well as some tips on how to win in the AI era. So let's start with defining a little bit what we mean by AI. And when we think about AI, I think most of us think first about the sexy stuff. Things like DeepMind beating the best Go players in the world, or IBM Watson playing Jeopardy, or a future of self-driving cars like Tesla is pioneering. But it's worth remembering that AI is actually in many more places of our lives already. It's in the autocomplete when you do a search query on Google, or in the playlist recommendation that maybe you get from services like Spotify. And of course, in a world where there is an infinite amount of content, it is in the algorithm that try to surface the most relevant content to you on social platforms like Facebook and others. It's also in product recommendation on Amazon, etc., etc. And the reason why AI is so present in our life today is because of something called machine learning. You can read the official definition, which is on the screen, of what machine learning is. But I thought I would try to make this a little bit simpler. And at its most simplest, machine learning, which is one of the core technology powering AI progress, is a program that consumes data and try to make prediction or to deliver a specific outcome based on what it's learned from previous data. So if you put this into more concrete example, the input data could be an English sentence, and the model from the machine learning system is able to basically predict the right French sentence that goes with it. Or into a quality assurance system, it could be images or data sense coming from sensors, or that basically then can be used to predict whether a specific part is about to fail and help you do preventive maintenance. So these are just a couple of examples. But I think it's more interesting when you look at how AI is already transforming our industry, when you look at digital marketing. And I want to spend a few minutes explaining to you already how AI can play a role and will continue to play a role in those various aspects of the marketing sphere. The first one is audience definition. We all have a multitude of devices, a multitude of content providers, and several transactions we do on e-commerce, for instance. And all of this is leaving breadcrumbs of data. And I think for marketers and brands trying to understand the consumer journey, it's become increasingly difficult to piece together the full picture of identity without relying on things like AI and machine learning to provide what we call AI resolved identities. So that's one example of AI already being of service today to our industry, and I think increasingly in the future doing so. The second example of AI in marketing is around media buying. with programmatic advertising, it's given us an ability to pay different prices for different opportunities to show a message to a consumer. And there's many factors that could affect the price, whether, of course, it's the right audience, the time of day, the device, the likelihood to convert, etc. And the reality is the explosion of data makes it extremely difficult for media buyers to figure out the true value of an impression without having the help of machine learning. And it's an area where at Xaxis, we've invested significant amount of time and money to really come up with the best way to make prediction about the likelihood of a specific digital media opportunity to transform into the desired business outcomes for our client. And to do so, we created our own technology platform called Copilot. And I'll share with you later in this presentation some of the learnings from that experience. So media buying is a very important area to apply AI to digital marketing. Another one which will become increasingly important in the future is attribution and measurement. With the demise of the third-party cookie, it's become increasingly difficult to understand which portion of your marketing investments are actually translating into the results that you want. And it's only going to become more and more difficult as the walls of the walled garden continue to be higher, and as also privacy laws in several parts of the globe continues to be stronger. So again, this is an era where AI can help. And there were two significant announcements on that field in the last month or so. The first one was Google announcing that it was getting rid of its last click attribution model in favor of a machine learning based model that will try to understand better what's the true driver of performance. And very similarly, a few weeks ago, some of you may have seen that the Facebook marketing science team came up with an open source project called Robin, which wants to democratize basically the ability for marketers to do marketing mix models and leverage data science and machine learning. So a very important space where I think machine learning will continue to play a role. Another one which I really like is the ability of AI to improve the experience for consumers and to drive more efficiency for brands by personalizing creatives. And this is a case study from one of our sister company, Essence, whose largest client is Google. And what they did in this particular case was they use natural language processing algorithm to understand automatically the context of the page. In this case, this was the recipe section of The Guardian, which is a large publisher in the UK. Extract from the content of the page what the most relevant ingredient was for the recipe, and basically use that knowledge to personalize the ad for the Google Home Mini, which is what you see here on the right. And this is great because it doesn't leverage any personal identifiable information. It's very contextually relevant, and it helps people understand the kind of things you can do with the Google Home Mini. Like here, hey Google, add ginger to my shopping list. So a great example of how AI and machine learning can also drive value in the field of creative. And I think if we stay on that creative part, it's not only on personalization of ads. AI is having a massive impact already on creative production. The image you see here on the left is from the Meta engine from Unreal or Epic Games, as most of you guys know them. So the same people who are behind the engine that powers massive games like Fortnite has basically opened the same engine to create avatars or artificial human, they call it meta-humans, where the reality is becoming increasingly difficult to assess between what is a computer-generated image and what's a shoot from a real-life model. And these kind of technologies are already used to produce some amazing commercials, and it's a space to watch. I think likewise, the ability to use intelligent rendering of images to simulate a shooting set, like what you can see here on the right, is massively game changing, both in terms of limitations that we've seen in the last year from COVID and the ability to shoot TV-like quality commercials without moving people on site, but also, of course, in terms of sustainability, because you don't have to travel all around the world to find those amazing locations. There is a link here in the presentation that I encourage you to see about basically a short movie from Ogars showing how this technology is actually being used today. So basically, we've talked about a few areas where AI is already having a big impact on marketing, from media buying to audience resolution to creative personalization or production and attribution and measurement. And if you look at why it's essential in all these areas to leverage AI, it's because of those following long-term trends. The first one is the increased complexity I already talked about. Data signals are growing at an unprecedented pace as we all consume more digital content, have multiple devices, and participate more and more into the e-commerce economy. And this is resulting into an explosion of data volume. This is a mind-boggling graph. It's looking at basically the size, estimated size, of all the data produced in a given year. And if you look at, from a comparison perspective, this is measured in zettabytes, and you can look up what the definition of that is. But if you compare where we are today from an estimated point of view for 2021 at 64 zettabytes, it's basically 32 times more than we were about 10 years ago. And this is projected to continue. So this massive explosion of data means that we need new ways to understand where the nuggets of insights, of value are within that incredible volume of data. And thank God for that, we have machine learning, we have AI, and those technologies have become extremely accessible. Of course, you all know AWS from Amazon. Again, you can find free machine learning services on AWS. You can find public APIs you could use for common things like image recognition or translation or transcoding of files, all sorts of things that would have been extremely difficult for people to replicate on their own. Likewise, Google, has also an open approach to making technologies like TensorFlow available to the general public and businesses. And so you have this explosion of data, this democratization of technologies like cloud computing and machine learning. And so it's no wonder that businesses increasingly are adopting AI. The main reason why also is because it really works. It drives efficiencies and it drives effectiveness. Just to mention two very small case studies on this. The first one is some work that WPP did for Walgreens Boots Alliance to try to build a predictive model to forecast where the demand would be the highest for vaccination in various parts of the United States. And by building these predictive models on the back of machine learning and algorithms, they've been able to have a fantastic campaign resulting into 43% higher appointment rate for vaccination in various states where Boots was operating, and delivering this at a 20% lower cost from the control for that particular campaign. So that's one example of, again, effectiveness you can derive. The other great example and showing the versatility of machine learning is something that Satalia, which is a UK-based AI specialist that has just been acquired by WPP, used to deliver a better way to schedule the time of auditors for PwC. And basically, the model that they built allowed them to optimize the schedule of 4,000 plus auditors across more than 8,000 clients, saving basically times in terms of travel, 14% decrease in terms of people's time, reducing also the time it takes for people in between assignments, which resulted into 4 weeks of extra capacity for the firm per person, which is quite amazing. So I think by now it's pretty clear to all of us that the AI era is already here and is here to stay and will probably only grow. So how can you win? I want to share with you a few tips from our own journey. So this is Andrew, who's a computer science professor at Stanford in machine learning and the founder and CEO of Coursera. And Andrew's blueprint for this is in 3 steps. The first one is execute a successful AI pilot project to gain momentum, right? Get buy-in from your leadership team or your group by showing them a concrete prototype or example of what you can do with this kind of technologies. Then build an in-house AI team, right? You need to have the right type of talent, which maybe you don't have today. And last but not least, when you've done these 2 things, make sure that you start instilling an AI culture into your company, which means providing much broader AI training to everyone. And I want to share with you a little bit of that journey for us. So as I mentioned, 5 years ago, we decided to do our own pilot project and come up with our own AI and machine learning system, which we named Copilot, to basically try to predict the likelihood of various impressions to derive a certain outcomes. The way we did this is, again, following the same blueprint as Andrew recommended, to build our own team, a cutting-edge team of machine learning engineers, data scientists, and coders, and basically leverage cutting-edge machine learning models to apply to this particular use case we wanted. And 5 years later, it's been a fantastic success. From these humble beginnings of just being a pilot, we now have a core enterprise-level technology which is powering our success across 43 countries and more than 1,900 advertisers. And so, we've had 5 years of experience of building that success. And I think one thing that's worth understanding, which maybe wasn't that clear to us in the beginning, we thought that the magic sauce was into the algorithm, right? But the reality is that most researchers, whether they're at Google, Amazon, and others, publish their algorithm. So it's fairly actually, again, democratize access to that. What really makes the difference in our experience is 2 things. One is data, right? You can have the best possible model, the best possible algorithm. If you don't have data at scale and the right type of data to feed the machine and allows the algorithm to learn, you're never going to get the outcome you want. So thinking about your data strategy, how are you going to get the right data at scale for the application you want, is a critical point of success. And then the second one, of course, is talent, right? At the end of the day, those are all enablers, these technologies. And what you need is people who understand the client problems you're trying to solve and the underlying technologies and data to create basically something that will make you successful. And make no mistake, there is a war for talent already. This is the findings from a World Economic Forum survey about the 20 job roles that are increasing the fastest around the world. And if you look at the top 3 here, data analyst and scientist, AI and machine learning specialist, and big data specialist, you can understand the talent war is on. And actually, interestingly enough, number 4 is digital marketing and strategy specialist, which I guess is good news for everybody on this call. So we're getting close to the end of this presentation, and I wanted to make sure that I had time to share with you practical tips to also get you started on the winning path to this new AI era. So the first one is creating a culture of innovation and continuous learning. It's super important if you want to win in this new space to have a culture that is attractive to the kind of talent you're going to need to win the race. And so these are some of the examples from a Xaxis point of view of some of the values that we try to embody and live in the company. So things like curiosity, things like being innovative, data-led, entrepreneurial, also diverse, which I think is key in terms of having the set of skills you need to succeed. And last but not least, promoting this desire of learning, continuously learning, because the reality is the technology moves so fast. By the time you hire the people, their skills are probably almost obsolete or will be in the next year or so. So you want people that are passionate about learning and keeping on the cutting edge. The second one is, how do you make sure that you also actively support upskilling and reskilling your current teams? Because as we've seen, it's extremely difficult to hire machine learning engineers or data scientists in the workplace today. There's probably not enough of them for everybody who wants their time. So a big part of winning, I think, in the future is about training and upskilling and reskilling. And one of the great things we've done in conjunction with WPP is put together a program using Coursera, which is an online learning platform, to create basically different skill sets and different learning opportunities for people who want to learn more about this space and continue to develop themselves and their careers by staying with the company. So you can see examples of that, but it's been a really big success. One thing also before I move to the next step is it's important to realize you need to create space for people to upskill and reskill. So one of the things we've done at Xaxis, which I'm proud of, is every month we give 1 day for our employees to basically spend on their own sort of development and learnings. We call it Thursday Thrives. It's usually the second Thursday of every month. And it's a day where nobody puts meeting in, at least internal meetings, and where managers try to clear up the schedule for their employees to make sure they have time to re-energize themselves and also to upskill on things like the AI Academy I was just showing you. So important to make that space. And once you've done all those things, I think it's important, of course, for people to understand the big vision you're trying to drive, but also to break it down into smaller objectives so that don't get discouraged by everything you need to do to be successful. So for us at Xaxis, our vision is to make advertising work better for brands and people by delivering fewer but more effective ads. And we think we will be able to do this by continuing to invest into AI and machine learning. But of course, that's a grand vision. When we rolled that vision out, the first thing we wanted is for everybody to start understanding the language, the culture of what being an AI-first company means. And so the personal challenge I gave to all of our 1,500 employees around the world was to get 80% of them certified on a course we had put together, which was an intro to AI and to our Copilot platform, and to do this within 3 months. And so it was a pretty bold goal, but everybody played their parts and we actually meet that objective. And I think it helped understand the importance AI will continue to have for our success. And also, I would say probably stimulated the curiosity of our employees to get on that learning path and on that journey of becoming more basically conversant in that very important field. The fourth tip is about testing and learning. And I want to quote Sarah, who's basically the lead for our Copilot offering and our global VP of disruption. She has this famous saying, which I think is perfect, which is a prototype is worth 1,000 business plans, right? So you can have grand ideas, grand vision. You can try to make it perfect or to wait till you have all the data you need or all the skills and talent you need. But the reality is that's not how you win. In a world where, again, change is the only constant and the pace of change keeps on accelerating, you need to learn fast. And so having that entrepreneurial spirit of starting on a small scale prototype so that you understand where the gaps are in terms of your data strategy, your talent strategy, and also are able to basically show results that can help you get the backing of your leadership teams or your CFO or other people who you need to have on board to win in the AI era is absolutely key. So basically get started, test and learn right away. And the last tip I want to, leave you with is this idea of having a proper data strategy. As we mentioned, cloud technology is fairly democratized. Even AI models are starting to get democratized by various players in the field. The hard part is really those two things, the talent and the data. So it's important for you to really put some serious thoughts into what you can do with the data you already have, which we refer to as first-party data. How can you operationalize that data to start feeding your machine learning initiatives? And also think about things like scale. Do you have enough of it so that actually it becomes statistically relevant and can help predict the right outcomes? If not, what could you do to get more of it? So these are very important things. And to illustrate the point I want to share with you, I started my career at Yahoo, where I stayed for 5 years. And I initially worked for the Yahoo search division. And we had some of the brightest, I think, data scientists and AI experts in the field. But in the end, the reasons I feel Yahoo lost the search war is not because their algorithm or talent was inferior to Google. I think it's because as Google continued to win market share, the scale of the data they could feed into the algorithm and the models they had built just give them an advantage in terms of their ability to predict the intent behind the search query. And so it's a great example for me of, again, data being the difference to basically determine the winner in this particular case. The screenshot on the right is to talk more about the fact that we have to be conscious about also the environment. And the reality of the environment today is that there is increased pressure from various parties in terms of what you can and cannot do in terms of data collection, data usage. And I would expect this global data protection and privacy regulation sphere to become only stronger in the next few years. So having that strategic input into your data strategy to really make it bulletproof is something worth considering as well. So I hope you found those 5 tips helpful. And if I had to conclude, I think that after you've listened to me, you're convinced also that AI and machine learning will have a lasting impact on our industry. And so the call to action, I think, for everybody listening on this call is to start upskilling your teams, your companies, and I would say also yourselves now, right? Read articles, take some of the free online trainings available around deep learning and machine learning, and basically start upscaling your skills. As we discuss, it's super key not to be fazed by the immensity of the task if you start from zero, but it's more important to find a pilot project to build momentum in your organization. And last but not least, over the long term, what will determine the winners and losers in the AI era are culture, talent, and data access. So start thinking for your company, for your department, how can you get an advantage to set up the right culture, attract the right talent, and have a proper data strategy that will fuel your success in the AI era. So that's all I wanted to share with you today. I hope you found this useful. If you want to follow more tidbits of tips or interesting things in this space, feel free to follow me on Twitter. You can see my Twitter handle here, or to follow Xaxis. And I wish you good luck into your journey on becoming successful in this new era of digital marketing powered by AI. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So we have some questions for you from the audience, but due to
Sure.
time constraint, we'll just stick to one question. So the question,
Okay, you tell me the
yeah,
question.
I'll tell
The
you the question.
question.
So the question is, how do startups compete in this era since big companies have all the data and the best AI teams?
So I think, again, the question is, it's about applying the same, I think, principles that we just discussed about to maybe a problem that is very specific, right? I think, as a startup trying to compete with Google on search, for instance, is probably not the best idea. But again, in the field of digital marketing, in the areas I described of attribution or optimizing media buying or resolving identity, I do believe that there are pockets of problems that have not been solved even by the big company, and that a startup with 100% laser focus on those problems could actually derive meaningful data, get the right talent, and make an impact.
Okay, that was helpful, sir. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I would also like to thank our attendees. And with this, we come to the end of the day three for Marketing Conclave. Hope to see you all again tomorrow. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care, everyone.
Good night.